This call is now being recorded.
Welcome to the V2V podcast. It's another edition of our Survivor Series project. And right off the bat, I wanted to make sure that people have an understanding about what's going on. We got some feedback from listener/survivor regarding one of the videos we made, and he was not happy. We'll get into kind of what that's about, but before we start with that discussion, I wanted to make an observation about our channel, and that is that we don't make any money doing this. If you notice that when you watch our videos, there are no ads in our videos, and that's because we're not monetized by YouTube. So we don't make any money doing this. We do it because we feel it's important, and we want to send the message out that survivors have voices, and they can tell their stories and talk about what they've been through and what they've overcome. That being said, if anyone wants to contribute monetarily to our channel, they can do so at patreon.com/V2V podcast. You can choose $1, $3, or $5 a month. It's just revolving. You can cancel that at any time. But it's really easy. It helps us out. It allows us to get supplies that we need for the show, software updates, editing, music, all that kind of stuff that goes along with producing a podcast. So it's not necessary. You don't have to do that, but it's available if you feel you can afford to contribute to the show at patreon.com/V2V podcast. And there's the ad. So welcome.
Welcome.
Yeah. Hey, it's Alexi. Wow.
Well, hey there.
Wow, I didn't even know you were there. You just popped right in.
I do that.
That's pretty cool. So what we're talking about today is kind of like, I guess I would characterize it as survivor to survivor conflict.
Yeah.
And I want to be clear that as we get into kind of what was said, that we're not trying to victim shame anybody. Survivors have gone through what they've gone through, and we're not taking anything away from that. We don't think that what am I trying to say? We believe that people can have their opinions and feelings about anything, and especially when it comes from someone who survived an institution like Geelong, there's bound to be long-lasting negative effects that sometimes are really, really difficult to overcome. So but we also think that it's important to address this kind of stuff when it pops up, to let other people know that, I guess, that we're on their side, as survivors of different programs ourselves, and that the whole cult environment, that we get it. We've done the same kinds of things ourselves, lashing out. And I think it's part of, the healing process, in a sense, to be able to, point out flaws in people's arguments so that everyone can kind of get back on the same page. And we want, ideally, like a reconciliation here with this person that we're going to be talking about, because we got sent an email, and your name was brought up, and other people's names were brought up, and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
All right. So the person who sent the email, he actually works as a researcher on the Last Stop documentary, along with another survivor, Mark Babbitt. They both were researchers on this documentary film by T.J. Nilsson, The Last Stop. And so he said that he listened to that podcast and knows Mark Babbitt and has known him since 2010. So they have a relationship. And apparently it was good. It was a good relationship. They like each other. And then he brings up this idea that back in 2010, he actually had a conversation with you about some former Elon employee that was kind of trolling him and verbally attacking him on the internet. So, you want to talk about that, or is that that's something that happened?
Yeah, I think I remember this, and it was when I was with Anonymous and doing that, and he wanted sort of like some type of help or protection, which I really couldn't provide in any way, or, I couldn't really provide a doc for him either, and it seemed like he wasn't mentally stable at that point either, because I would have, rationally listened to him. I just remember it ending with him being rather abusive and me just saying, listen, I don't have time for this. That's all I really...
He wanted you to help him kind of troll this guy back, or fight back online with other kinds of, verbal attacks, this kind of stuff that he says he was getting. He wanted someone to help him fire back. And it sounds like you just weren't into that idea. But the thing is that he says that there were 6 other people that were also kind of getting the same treatment from this former employee. But he just thought you had a lack of understanding and compassion about what he was going through. I don't know how much he knew about what you had already been through regarding your own program ordeal. But I would think that maybe the 6 other people may have been better choices, since they also seem to be getting harassed by the same guy, this former Elon employee. I guess his name was Danny Benison, for anyone who wants to know. And he was upset that you didn't have time for him, and took that pretty personally, which happens. We've all been kind of offended by stuff like that, where we think something is really important, and the other person doesn't quite share in that passion. And so I get it. That can be painful, but this is like 9 years ago. And that seems like a long time to be carrying this resentment forward. So I think what's going on here, from what I understand, is the email was kind of all over the place. But he says that we just, in his opinion, that we just don't get it, and that he wants to hear a podcast that is truthful and gives assistance to survivors of other programs. And I guess he means programs that aren't Elon, and he doesn't want us to do the podcast in order to inflate our egos. So I think we're in the clear there. This is not an easy thing to do. Sometimes it's really not pleasant.
I have horrendous anxiety and panic attacks about doing the show. I get incredible anxiety right before starting. And I think that, at times I have to put it off because it's too much for me, or I have to put it down, but it's also incredibly helpful at the end of it all. It seems like it helps me a lot.
It helps you. It seems to be helping other people, at least
Yeah.
most of the comments that we get.
I hope it helps other people too, but I mean, like, just from I don't know. You know, I just know from my experience as a survivor, my PTSD calms down tremendously. You know?
Sure. And every interview that I've done, and as you probably have the same experience, every survivor that I speak to, you know, at the end of the discussion, there always seems to be a thank you for being there to put up a platform so that people can speak using their real names, anonymously, anything they want to talk about. And there has been some controversy surrounding that with some of the people we've spoken to. And we've also heard, you know, constructive negative comments about who we've spoken to in the past, specifically former staff, which makes perfect sense. Like, people were upset, you know, and but I think it's important to allow people, even people that we don't necessarily agree with, to tell their stories. And when we found out more information about this guy in particular, we did update and say, here's what else we found, you know. And so we're not just letting people, especially coming from the abuser side of things, just have a cakewalk through what they want to say about what the positive things about any program that they were associated with. So that being said, he then goes into a story about going to a conference in 2001 hosted by a guy named Dr. Arnold Trebach. And I don't know who that is. I guess we could find out.
I don't know either.
And then he met Mia Salovitz, the author of a book called Help at Any Cost. She did a book, I think, regarding survivorship and some stories regarding survivors and what they've been through.
Well,
and
what she did was,
go ahead.
What she did was she wrote the first book on troubled teen industry, and it was really an expose on a religious place that this young survivor went to that she somehow found out about, and then she then kind of explored the troubled teen industry and the ins and outs and sort of how. I think there's multiple stories in there. There's one about the different kids who died in wilderness, and you know, she really exposed it for what it is. She did an amazing job.
Yeah,
but anyway,
it's almost 20 years old now, and I think she'd be a really interesting person to talk to. I haven't reached out yet, but I think that might be really valuable to get some perspective from another researcher, another person who is kind of against TTI, you know, and actually put forth enough effort to write a book about it. And anyway, he says that she wanted to put his story in her book, and he kind of left it there. I don't know if Matt's story is in the book. I don't have a problem either way with that. Like, that's great. It just, I don't know if he was trying to, like, bolster his credibility by, like, talking about this, because then he talks about meeting Stanton Peele, Phil Elberg, and a guy named Wes Fager, who's apparently a cult expert. It sounds like a really interesting conference, and I'm glad that he was there, you know.
Me too.
So he moves on to talking about a conversation about an incident at Elon involving a time where he stabbed another student. And he says that he spoke to many other survivors from the program at the conference about that. And then he asks you what you were doing in July 2001, as if what he was doing, because of attending this conference, was more helpful, more important. But again, that was a long time ago. It was nearly 20 years ago. So I guess the question is, what were you doing in July 2001, Alexi?
In July 2001, I was living on Hill Street in Santa Monica and my mom's, and I was waking up and taking my $10 budget down to the beach to meet homeless people to try and find weed to deal with PTSD. And I still had no lexicon to be able to explain what had happened to me, so I just said I had just gotten out of juvie to everyone.
Right, because that's more understandable. Right.
Yeah. And just like, that was poignant enough, and okay, cool. You know, but I was basically coming home and I was starting to have flashbacks. And I hadn't quite stopped talking yet, but it was coming on.
Right. All right. Well, I guess that's what you were doing. He's a bit older than you are, I think.
Yeah.
And so that makes sense. I mean, I guess, you know, he's doing adult things, you know, that, you know, he's going to conferences and talking to important people who are anti-program advocates, I guess is the best way to put it, and you were dealing with the repercussions of being in Heritage.
Yep. And Devereaux. Yeah.
And Devereaux, right. So then Hoffman takes kind of a left turn here in the email and says that he simply, personally, doesn't make shit up out of thin air and call it a fact. So that's cool. Like, I appreciate that. I appreciate that he doesn't make stuff out of thin air and call it a fact. I think the implication is that we do, which isn't the case. I don't know. I mean, I'd love someone to, like, point out things that we get wrong. I mean, in fact, we have had people do that. And and we've corrected the record there, too. I think the interview we did with J.C. Henderson, somebody made a point, and this was more of an interview style thing, that I was over-talking her, that I was interrupting too much, and there was, you know, and I took note of that and pulled back a bit, you know, and let people be more free to express their complete thoughts without getting excited and jumping in. So, so, I mean, when people say things that are critical of what we're doing here, it's good, you know, and we appreciate that. So keep telling us what we're doing wrong. Absolutely. But we don't make stuff up.
No.
And he states that he has credibility among the survivor community, and that he knows the difference between truth and fiction. And I'm really happy to hear that he has credibility, because you know, he's been through this. He understands it, and I would hope that people would trust that he knows what he's talking about. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So he listened to the show, the interview with Mark Babbitts, and he says that because of that he is no longer affiliated with something called Elan Survivors Incorporated. I'm not aware of what Elan Survivors Inc. is. I haven't heard of it. I don't know if it's like the company that backed the documentary, perhaps? Like it's something that was created to... Okay. So he said, okay, I'm not associated with that. And that's fine. You know, we understand that too. We've also been kind of associated with certain groups and have chosen not to be associated with them anymore for particular reasons, you know, some disagreements, stuff like that. And that's fine. We are still 100% behind the mission of, lost survivors. We don't necessarily have to agree with everything that they do, but I personally, and I guess I can speak for you too, we are in no way against what they're doing. It's just sometimes there's personality clashes, and sometimes you gotta, step away from each other because you're running on two different tracks, trying to achieve the same goals in a different way, maybe.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So far, I mean, what he said, I'm waiting for the criticism about what we're doing, actually. And,
yeah.
So he seems to be upset that, this is kind of strange, he seems to be upset that you didn't know him when he was a teenager before he was involved in the Elan. He seems to be concerned that Mark Babbitt will hear about this email, but I don't know what he has to be afraid of since he's directly referencing the interview that for some reason he seems to disagree with. There's nothing specific, but he was kind of calling out Babbitt and at the same time saying, oh, I don't want him to hear this.
Yeah.
But there's nothing really that negative about anything that he's saying other than some kind of vague upset that he's got. He also makes the claim that he's one of the only people who uses his real name while he exposes the truth and that he wants justice. And he thinks that Mark Babbitt, who consequently is using his real name, is selfish and is contradicting himself. Again, I wish that he would have been more specific about what he thinks is the contradictory stuff. But there are many people who use their real names. Some people don't. They have a reason to feel like they, don't want to, and that's fine. But most people, I think, use their real names. So he just seems to be setting himself out as someone who has been through things that most survivors couldn't survive. And I think that's part of the real problem I have with this, is that he's kind of claiming that he's been through more than anybody else. He's been through worse than anybody else. And it just kind of shows a lack of empathy, which
yeah, but happens. It's not.
It happens.
It does happen. It really does happen. It's a huge part of the PTSD, I believe. That we in particular. I mean, I brought this up the other day in group that do we have our own diagnosis from program? And is it separate from anything else? I mean, it's definitely, slow onset PTSD. And it's definitely kind of complex PTSD, but it has its own elements too. It has twinges of Patty Hearst syndrome. It has, Stockholm in it. There's a lot of it. And, it's so tricky because you start to think that you're the only person, who's hurting when you're hurting so bad. I just think this guy's hurting a lot,
Yeah, I do too. And so, he's clearly upset. I guess he only listened to the one interview and kind of goes on to say that we should be doing more stuff and that in his opinion we're somehow actually helping TTI. And I just don't understand how that can even be possible. Because everything that we do is against these programs. Everything. We don't have a positive word to say about any of it. So I don't see how anything that we're doing could possibly be helping them. And we make it very clear when we end a lot of these shows is to tell parents who are thinking about sending their kids there not to. Like, don't do it. Don't send your kid there. Like,
and I'm not gonna talk in any of the program's lingo, and I'm not gonna use the program's point of view, and their sort of spin on things. I've never done that here, and neither have you. It's very important that this is a space where we can talk. When I say talk TTI, I mean talk truth about TTI and what it is in reality, without any of the bullshit and without any of the sort of smoke and mirrors that goes on in the sales.
Right. I think the closest thing that we've done or I've done in that respect is when I've done like the long form exposés where I go through all of their websites and their staff and I'll read what they say they do, from in their own words, and then basically use their own words to contradict themselves. Like, but in no way ever when I'm saying what they say am I agreeing with it, because what I'm doing is finding out how dishonest the websites are, the ads are, the testimonials in a lot of cases are. They're just not real. The uncredentialed staff, the weird goings on that don't make any sense in relation to what they say they do, as opposed to survivors saying what they've experienced. So yeah, we've always been very clear that we want to hear what everyone has to say, including the programs, and then we're going to destroy the programs by bringing out what's actually happening. So yeah, there is no way that we are at all helping these places, and no, it just isn't happening. So he's misinformed there, and I guess hopefully he'll hear this. I think I'm going to send him the link so that he can understand, I guess, more clearly that we take this kind of stuff seriously, and that he's welcome to say anything that he wants to say regarding what we're doing. But if he's wrong, we're going to point it out. And
right.
I hope that he comes around to understanding that we're on his side.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at him. I don't think you are either. No. I don't think I spoke to Mark. He's not upset with him. He's worried.
Yeah.
About this guy.
We all can. We don't. This shit is brutal, man, and it kills people.
Yeah.
No joke. It kills people.
So
I guess survivor rate isn't good. This is serious shit.
Yeah. I mean, he left Elon a long time ago, and he took part in helping. He definitely took part in helping ending it. I know that for sure. Like, he deserves a lot of credit for that.
Yeah.
But he's still harboring these feelings, and what my hope is that he can somehow redirect this anger that he feels and the hurt that he was subjected to years ago, to helping us and if not us, pointing out the negative things that are still going on with other programs. This hasn't ended. Elon is gone, but the effects are lingering for decades now. I mean, they shut down in 2011, so it's been almost 10 years since they've been gone. So there are people in their early 20s even now, or into their early 30s who were there. And so it's not go ahead.
I just want to just quickly say, because this is really important to me, is that Elon eventually was accredited by NatSap, and NatSap is very much alive, and that this never dies, and that the snake eats the snake. And so somehow someone who is involved in Elon is also still involved in the TTI business with NatSap. This doesn't end.
Yeah. Right. It doesn't end. And, I guess that's it. But interesting thing happened yesterday. Joe Ritchie's son, who was very anti-TTI, friend requested me, which I thought was very cool. Now, that would be an interesting person to talk to.
That's fucking awesome, and yes.
Yeah, I mean, to get a very deep inside perspective about what kind of monster that guy was, his dad.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Sometimes those wounds can be difficult to talk about. And but we're just going to keep on doing this, and like I said, we have not made 1 cent from doing this. It's something that we feel is important enough to do just for the benefit of doing it and helping each other out and making sure that people who aren't aware of what TTI is become aware of what it is, so that we can slowly but surely stop it. Put an end to this stuff. It's not going to happen overnight, but we can definitely have an effect. And the more people that get together and let their voices be heard, the quicker that can become a reality. This is, it's not a pipe dream. It's stuff really happens when people get together with one voice to make stuff happen. And so we're just going to keep on doing it. And guess that's it. Wow. So that went better than I thought. I mean, I was worried. I was worried about not wanting to, further hurt somebody's feelings. So I think we walked that line pretty well.
Me too.
All right. Well, there it is. Survivor Series. One more discussion about the evils of TTI in the books.
Cha-ching.
Right. All right. Well, we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.